Shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. Tonight we're going to get into the book of Zechariah. We're also going to get into the book of Ezra. So actually, we're going to finish up the rest of Zechariah tonight and then start reading from the book of Ezra. And so it's going to be an amazing... Actually, you know what? Just a second here. I said Ezra. Sorry, not Ezra. Esther, not Ezra. Yes, so we're going to read Zechariah chapters 10 through 14 and Esther chapters 1 through 5 tonight. And always, if any of you know of anybody who would be interested in joining us and listening to the scriptures being read and fellowship and questions and such, make sure you send them a message. Let them know about the live stream tonight and let them know to tune in. All right, so yes, as always, welcome, welcome. See what we have here in the live chat. We have Psalm 94 says shalom. Billy says shalom. We have Calamento says shalom all. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome. Blessings multiplied to you. So yeah, let's get into this. Zechariah chapter 10. And I'm going to start. Let me see here. I've got to pull it up here first. Sorry about this. Yeah, starting at verse 1. Zechariah chapter 10, verse 1. Ask for the rain in the season of spring rain. The Lord makes the rain clouds. He will give them showers of rain and crops in the field for everyone. For the idols speak falsehood, and the diviners see illusions. They relate empty dreams and offer empty comfort. Therefore, the people wander like sheep. They suffer affliction because there is no shepherd. My anger burns against the shepherds, so I will punish the leaders. In the footnotes, literally, the male goats. For the Lord of armies has tended his flock, the house of Judah. He will make them like his majestic steed in battle. The cornerstone will come from Judah. The tent peg will come from them, and also the battle bow and every ruler together. They will be like warriors in battle, trampling down the mud of the streets. They will fight because the Lord is with them. They will put horsemen to shame. I will strengthen the house of Judah and deliver the house of Joseph. I will restore them because I have compassion on them. They will be as though I had never rejected them. For I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them. Ephraim will be like a warrior, and their hearts will be glad as if with wine. Their children will see it and be glad. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord. I will whistle and gather them because I have redeemed them. They will be as numerous as they once were. Though I sow them among the nations, they will remember me in the distant lands. They and their children will live and return. I will bring them back from the land of Egypt and gather them from Assyria. I will bring them to the land of Gilead and to Lebanon, but it will not be enough for them. The Lord will pass through the sea of distress and strike the waves of the sea. All the depths of the Nile will dry. The pride of Assyria will be brought down, and the scepter of Egypt will come to an end. I will strengthen them in the Lord. They will march in his name. This is the Lord's declaration. Chapter 11, Zechariah chapter 11. Open your gates, Lebanon, and fire will consume your cedars. Wail, Cypress, for the cedar has fallen. The glorious trees are destroyed. Wail, oaks of Bashan, for the stately forest has fallen. Listen to the wail of the shepherds, for their glory is destroyed. Listen to the roar of young lions, for the thickets of the Jordan are destroyed. The Lord my God says, shepherd the flock intended for slaughter. Those who buy them slaughter them, but are not punished. Those who sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, because I have become rich. Even, even their own shepherds have no compassion for them. Indeed, I will no longer have compassion on the inhabitants of the land. This is the Lord's declaration. Instead, I will turn everyone over to his neighbor and his king. They will devastate the land, and I will not rescue it from their hand. So I shepherded the flock intended for slaughter, the oppressed of the flock. In the footnotes, it says the Septuagint reads, slaughter that belonged to the sheep merchants. I took 2 staves, calling one favor and the other union, and I shepherded my flock. And I shepherded the flock. In 1 month, I got rid of these shepherds. I became impatient with them, and they also detested me. Then I said, I will no longer shepherd you. Let what is dying die, and let what is perishing perish. Let the rest devour each other's flesh. Next, I took my staff called favor and cut it in two, annulling the covenant I made with all the peoples. It was annulled on that day, and the oppressed of the flock who were watching me knew that it was the word of the Lord. Then I said to them, If it seems right to you, give me my wages, but if not, keep them. So they weighed my wages, 30 pieces of silver. Throw it to the potter, the Lord said to me. This magnificent price I was valued by them. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw it into the house of the Lord to the potter. The Syriac reads treasury, throw it to the treasury. Likewise, later on in the verse, the Hebrew manuscripts and the Syriac read treasury. As always, as we read this, I can't help but think of how this reflects what Judas did. Judas taking the pieces of silver, although it wasn't 30 pieces, and throwing it to the potter. Yes, so a lot of people believe this is a fulfillment of, actually, Judas is a fulfillment of this prophecy. However, we have this number different. Now, let me just quickly go over here, and I believe it is 20 pieces. If we look at 20 pieces of silver, no, it's not actually. Just looking up the. Okay, I have to look into the cross references here. Matthew 27. So it says in verse 3, this is Matthew 27, verse 3. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was remorseful and brought back. Okay, it says 30 pieces of silver here. I do believe in other translations it is different, but I'll have to double check that. Brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? You see to it. Then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. But the priest took the silver and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury because they are the price of blood. And they consulted together and bought with them the potter's field to bury the strangers. Just a second here. Verse 8, therefore, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, and they took 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they of the children of Israel priced, and gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me. And this is Jeremiah 32, 6, verse 9, or verses 6 to 9. So let's just go over there. Jeremiah chapter 32. Okay. Something's not adding up here. Just give me a second. It says Jeremiah chapter 32, verses 6 to 9. Yeah, as you can see, this, okay. Okay. So Jeremiah chapter 32, verses 6 through 9 is really very, it's not very, it does not match what it says here in Matthew 27, verse 10. I believe that is referring to Zechariah, but that's a really strange. You see how that is a really strange cross reference there. Quoting, there's a quote here, and it says Jeremiah 32, 6 through 9. And as you can see, Jeremiah 32, 6 through 9 does not say that. I mean, it vaguely talks about a field and vaguely talks about silver, but it's not. It's not. It doesn't match. It's not a very a good match at all. Okay, well, let's just go back over here to Zechariah. Okay, verse 14. Then I cut into my staff union. Excuse me. Then I cut into my staff union, annulling the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. The Lord also said to me, take the equipment of a foolish shepherd. I am about to raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for those who are perishing, and he will not seek the lost or heal the broken. He will not sustain the healthy, but he will devour the flesh of the fat sheep and tear off their hooves. Woe to the worthless shepherd who deserts the flock. May a sword strike his arm and his right eye. May his arm wither away and his right eye go completely blind. Okay, just a second here. All right. So just before we go to Zechariah chapter 12, let's see what else we have here in the live chat. We have Alan says, shalom, everyone. Shalom, Alan. Vinny as well says, shalom, everyone. Shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome. Blessings multiplied to you. Caballero, thank you. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. He said, I didn't know it was recently your birthday. Thank you so much for the daily Bible reading. May the Lord continue to bless you greatly. Thank you very much, Caballero. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. So let's go on over to Zechariah chapter 12. Zechariah chapter 12, Judah's security, a pronouncement, the word of the Lord concerning Israel, a declaration of the Lord, who stretched out the heavens, laid the foundation of the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him. Look, I will make Jerusalem a cup that causes staggering for the peoples who surround the city. The siege against Jerusalem will also involve Judah. On that day, I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all peoples. All who try to lift it injure themselves severely when all the nations of the earth gather against her. On that day, this is the Lord's declaration: I will strike every horse with panic and its rider with madness. I will keep a watchful eye on the house of Judah, but strike all the horses of the nations with blindness. Then each of the leaders of Judah will think to himself, the residents of Jerusalem are my strength, through the Lord of armies, their God. On that day I will make the leaders of Judah like a fire pot in a wood pile, like a flaming torch among sheaves. They will consume all the peoples around them on the right and the left, while Jerusalem continues to be inhabited on its site in Jerusalem. The Lord will save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of David's house and the glory of Jerusalem's residents may not be gathered than that of Judah. May not be greater than that of Judah. On that day, the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that on that day, the one who is weakest among them will be like David on that day, and the house of David will be like God, like the angel of the Lord before them. On that day, I will set out to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Then I will pour out a spirit of grace, or pour out the spirit of grace and prayer on the house of David and the residents of Jerusalem, and they will look at me whom they pierced. Powerful, powerful testimony or prophecy here. Um, can't help but I can't help but think of the book of Revelation. Not sure if the Blue Letter Bible has that cross reference in here or not, but in Revelation we have, I don't think they do, or maybe they do. Revelation chapter 1 verse 7. Yeah. Revelation chapter 1 verse 7. Yeah. Look, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn over him. So it is to be. Amen. All right. So awesome, awesome prophecy here. They will mourn for him. You notice there's the first person and then third person, right? So it's like they will look at me whom they pierced. They will mourn for him as one who mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly for him as one weeps for a firstborn. On that day, the mourning in Jerusalem will be as great as the mourning of Hadad Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo. The land will mourn, every family by itself, the family of David's house by itself, and their women by themselves, the family of Nathan's house by itself, and their women by themselves, the family of Levi's house by itself, and their women by themselves, the family of Shimei, a descendant of Levi, by itself, and their women by themselves. All the remaining families, every family by itself, and their women by themselves. Zechariah chapter 13. On that day, a fountain will be opened for the house of David and for the residents of Jerusalem to wash away sin and impurity. I love how it says to wash away sin instead of to cover. Wash away sin and impurity. On that day, this is the declaration of the Lord of armies. I will remove the names of the idols from the land. They will no longer be remembered. I will banish the prophets, false prophets, and unclean spirit from the land. Interesting that it mentions unclean spirit from the land. It's almost like the land itself is possessed. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like the land itself has an unclean spirit. If a man still prophesies, his father and his mother who bore him will say to him, you cannot remain alive because you have spoken a lie in the name of the Lord. When he prophesies, his father and his mother who bore him will pierce him through. On that day, every prophet will be ashamed of his vision when he prophesies. They will not put on a hairy cloak in order to deceive. I suppose it sounds like they use this to show themselves to be a prophet or for show, basically. Verse 5, he will say, I am not a prophet. I work the land. For a man purchased me as a servant since my youth, or sold me as a servant since my youth. If someone asks him, what are these wounds on your chest, literally wounds between your hands, then he will answer, I received the wounds in the house of my friends. Sword, awake against my shepherd, against the man who is my associate. This is the declaration of the Lord of armies. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. I will turn my hand against the little ones. And we know in the New Testament, they quote this when Yeshua was arrested and everyone was scattered, basically. So they quoted this as a prophecy that was fulfilled. Verse 8, in the whole land, this is the Lord's declaration. 2/3 will be cut off and die, but 1/3 will be left in it. Literally 2/3 in it will be cut off and die. I will put this third through the fire. I will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, they are my people, and they will say, the Lord is our God. Zechariah chapter 14. The Lord's triumph and reign. Look, a day belonging to the Lord is coming when the plunder taken from you will be divided in your presence. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem for battle. The city will be captured, the houses looted, and the women raped. Half the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be removed from the city. And the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as he fights on a day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. The Mount of Olives will be split in half from east to west, forming a huge valley, so that half the mountain will move to the north and half to the south. You will flee by the mountain valley, for the valley of the mountains will extend to Azal. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him. In some manuscripts, it reads with you instead of with him. Powerful prophecies. I think about Jude, where it says that Enoch prophesied that the Lord will come with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon the ungodly. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 6. On that day there will be no light. The sunlight and moonlight will diminish. Okay, so footnote says the Septuagint and Syriac Vulgate, several manuscripts read no light or cold or ice. No light, the precious ones will congeal. Verse 7, it will be a unique day known to the Lord, without day or night, but there will be light at evening. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half of it toward the eastern sea and half toward the western sea, in the summer and winter alike. So the eastern sea would be the Dead Sea, and the western sea would be the Mediterranean Sea. On that day, the Lord will become king over the whole earth. Wow, amazing. The Lord alone and his name alone. Let me just go over I just have to do this. Go over here to Isaiah chapter 2, also Micah chapter 4. Let's go over here to Micah chapter 4 as well, because they all talk about this event. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 1. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law. In the Hebrew, that says Torah. And the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And in Micah chapter 4, it's pretty much almost identical to that. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains. Again, this is figuratively speaking, the mountain being the government of the Lord, shall be established over all governments, basically, and shall be exalted above the hills, which means even the smaller governments and all authorities on earth. The peoples shall flow to it. Many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. So in other words, let's go see the Lord. Let's go to Jerusalem. Let's go meet him. To the house of the God of Jacob, he will teach us his ways. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Get on, book the flight. Let's go. We're going to talk to him. We're going to be taught of him directly. Wow. Praise God. He will teach us his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. For out of Zion the law, the Torah, shall go forth. Who said the Torah is done away with? And the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Beautiful. This, I just can't help but think of that as I read this passage here in Zechariah 14, 8 and 9. On that day, living water. Living water, I believe, just means simply fresh water, flowing water, will flow out from Jerusalem, half of it toward the eastern sea, Dead Sea, half of it toward the western sea, Mediterranean Sea, in summer and winter alike. On that day, the Lord will become king over the whole earth. The Lord alone and his name alone. All the land from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, will be changed into a plain. But Jerusalem will be raised up and will remain, or will be inhabited on its site from the Benjamin gate to the place of the first gate, or the former gate, to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the royal wine presses. People will live there, and never again will there be a curse of complete destruction. So Jerusalem will dwell in security. This will be the plague with, with which the Lord strikes all the people who have warred against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. On that day, now let me just stop here for a second. I'm not sure about you guys, but I have heard it taught before. I'm not saying this is, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is what it is, but I'm just sharing with you. I have heard that some people believe this is talking about a nuclear a war. Okay, so and that the radiation would cause it. Now, again, this is a theory. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is what it means. I mean, hey, who knows? But this is what this is what some people believe. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, their tongues will rot in their mouths, basically, while they're still standing. Instantly consumed. On that day, a great panic from the Lord will be among them, so that each will seize the hand of another, and the hand of one will rise against the other. Judah will also fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the surrounding nations will be collected. Gold, silver, and clothing in great abundance. By the way, the surrounding nations are very wealthy, right? The surrounding nations are very wealthy. At least today they are. The same plague as the previous one will strike the horses, mules, camels, donkeys, and all the animals that are in those camps. So the same plague as the previous one will literally be on all those animals. Verse 16, then all the survivors from the nations that came against Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship King, the Lord of armies, and to celebrate the festival of shelters, the festival of booths, Sukkot. Interesting. My question is, I'm not saying anything. I'm just thinking out loud here. My question is, how much time is there between what we read or hear earlier about the plague, the panic, striking the people in that area? How much time is there between that and Sukkot? Just wondering. I mean, it's not clear here. It's not clear, but it sounds like it's at least before the festival of Sukkot. Should any of the families of the earth not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of armies rain will not fall on them. So rain is considered to be a great blessing. So if anybody who does not go to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of armies, basically, you're not going to get rain for your crops. You're not going to get food. If the people of Egypt will not go up and enter, then rain will not fall on them. This will be the plague that the Lord inflicts on the nations who do not go up to celebrate the festival of shelters. Isn't that amazing? It's like, celebrate Sukkot or else. Celebrate Sukkot or you're going to be, your land is going to be a desert. You're going to be begging for water, begging for rain. This will be the punishment of Egypt and all the nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of shelters. On that day, the words holy to the Lord will be on the bells of the horses. The pots in the house of the Lord will be like the sprinkling basins before the altar. Every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah will be holy to the Lord of armies. All who sacrifice will come and use pots to cook in. And on that day, there will no longer be a Canaanite in the house of the Lord of armies, a merchant. Again, I have to point this out. The sacrificial system is going to be in place. It appears to be. And so just before I get to the book of Esther, let's see what else we have here in the live chat. Tammy says, Shalom all. Shalom, Tammy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Blessings. Andrew says, what's up? Hey, Andrew, how's it going? Another night of reading and fellowship and all that good stuff. Alan says, I believe this is speaking of the New Jerusalem. Going nowhere. Says, I have a question about one of the Ten Commandments. What does it mean to honor our parents from a biblical point of view? So to honor your parents, the word honor there is very, very closely related to the word. Actually, it means glory. So you know that word Ichabod? It's the opposite to the word that's used in the Hebrew for honor. So to honor your parents means to give them glory. In other words, that includes a lot, right? To give them respect, to honor them, simply to honor them, not to dishonor them. Okay, so I think honor is a fairly good translation of the word, but the word itself simply means glory. So, since you asked here, just before we dive into the book of Ezra, let's just go over there quickly. Just quickly jump on over there. So honor your father and your mother in the interlinear kabod. Okay, remember I said Ichabod. Ichabod is the opposite to this kabod. Kabod. So it's speaking of honor, glorify, honorable. It has a connotation of like heaviness, like weight, like worthiness, right? Worthy, hard and glorious, or make heavy. It's like many different things. Great, heavier. So it's got this connotation of being weighty. Now, being heavy is not a bad thing here, in the sense of you see, back in those days, money was weighed, right? It was like the silver was weighed. So the heavier a thing was, the more worth it has, right? So it's basically to honor your father and your mother would be to give them to acknowledge how much worth how much. How much glory is due to them, how worthy they are, to honor them. So that's basically what it means. Very good question, Going Nowhere. Thank you very much. Also, another question here. How long did Job suffer? That's a very, very good question, Going Nowhere. It doesn't say. Like, the scriptures do not say how long Job suffered. It tells us that his friends sat with him for 7 days, but he could have suffered for a lot longer than that. Could have been days, weeks, months. Really, it's up to speculation. As far as I understand, and everything that I've ever heard and studied about the book of Job, it's really just up for speculation. I can't see it being like I'm just here. I am speculating here. I can't see it being like years. It could be. It's a possibility, but I can't see it being that long enough for everybody to know about it, and long enough for him, because if he was suffering in that state for that long, he could, I mean, that could be, well, you know, I don't know how he could survive really. So I can't see it being that long, but we know for sure it was at least a week, at least no, no shorter than that for sure. So that's a good question. That's the best I could do for that one. Thank you. Going nowhere. Andrew says, what does it mean that Jesus became sin? That's a very heavy question as well. Okay, so you're asking from the point of view of how Paul taught. So I'm going to reply from that frame of reference. So like Paul said that he who knew no sin became sin, so that so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. Now you can kind of connect the dots, so to speak, and can make a connection between quote unquote sin and the serpent. John chapter 3, according to the Gospel of John, take it for what it is. According to the Gospel of John, Jesus said that as the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness, so the Son of Man will be lifted up. Now, I know a lot of contemporary Christian music artists sing these songs, lift him up, lift him up, lift him up. Actually, in that day and in that age, in that culture, lifting somebody up literally meant to crucify them. So when it says there in John chapter 3 that the Son of Man will be lifted up, everybody understood that it meant to be crucified. So having said that, according to the Gospel of John, again, take it for what it is, Jesus likened himself unto a serpent. Now that means that says a lot, because I mean, look at what it says in the scriptures of what the serpent is symbolic of. Not just sin. I mean, that's a mild symbol. What do you call it? That's just a mild. I'm lost for words right now. It's a mild symbolism, right? We have, of course, in the Garden of Eden, we have the devil coming as a serpent. Now, also in Exodus chapter 7. Let me make sure I got that right. I'm pretty sure it was Exodus chapter 7, verse 1, where, so God said to Moses, see, I have made you as God to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet. So this is it's a unique analogy here we have going on, or maybe not an analogy, but rather like, again, symbolism, where you have Moses is likened to God. Actually, the word "as" here is in italics, which means it's not in the original Hebrew, which that means that it literally says, the Lord says to Moses, see, I have made you God to Pharaoh. Okay. I'm not saying that Moses literally is God. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that this is what it literally says, because that word "as" is not in there. So Moses is in this particular pitch is a picture of God, whereas Aaron is a picture of God's prophet. So you think about it like this: when Moses came down the mountain, oh no, sorry, that's a different thing. There's a lot of different analogies and similes here, but similarities, parallels. So when Moses went before Pharaoh with the staff in his hand, the branch in his hand, the rod in his hand, as it were, and he threw it down and it became a serpent. And then that serpent ate up all the other serpents, and then he picked it back up again and became a staff again. That's just like a symbolism of Moses being God. Okay, again, this is not just me saying it again. This is what the scriptures itself says, that Moses, I have made you literally God to Pharaoh. So Moses is a picture of God. And we read just recently that the Messiah is called the branch, right? Which is like the rod. So it's like God throws down the branch and the branch becomes a serpent. And the serpent eats up the rest of the serpents. And Moses, God, picks up the branch again, the resurrection. Yeah, it's a really deep concept, Andrew, and it's a really powerful one too. Because a lot of people believe that Jesus just paid for the sins of the world. Depends on how you want to look at it. But in this, I know you're referring to this to Paul's writings there, and some of the things that I'm talking about. It goes a lot further than just Jesus paying for sins. It's Jesus actually became sin. Even goes further than that. He became a serpent. It's quite profound, you know. And so this is why I say, like, for those who are struggling with sin, those who are, because there are a lot of people out there, they are literally enslaved to sin. They're really slaves of sin. The easiest way to break those chains of slavery is to look upon Yeshua as your sin and identify with him, so that you say, hey, when he died, I died. My sinful self died. My sin died. So when he died, my sin died, and he became that serpent, and he swallowed up all the rest of the evil, right? So it's a very, very deep concept, and it's a very powerful concept as well. So thank you for asking, Andrew. Very good question. Jordan says, shalom. Hope I didn't miss Zechariah 14. You did, Jordan. You missed Zechariah chapter 14. You did. Welcome, Jordan. Welcome. Good to see you. Blessings multiplied to you. All right. So let us go to Ezra. So we're going to read. Oh, I keep on saying Ezra. Esther. Sorry. Esther. Okay. Now, let me just kind of preface this by saying this. This is the plan. In the next, like tonight, I'm going to read half of the book of Esther. It's not a very long book anyway. I'm going to read half tonight. I'm going to read half tomorrow. And on Saturday, Lord willing, Onia is going to come on, and he's going to share with us some of his, or all of his, work on his version of the book of Esther. So I'm going to just share the common Hebrew Masoretic, family of the book of Esther, because the book of Esther in Hebrew is quite a bit different than the book of Esther in Greek, right? So I'm saving that for Onia on Saturday. So yeah, I'm going to read the Hebrew version, the Masoretic, translated from the Masoretic version tonight and tomorrow night. and Onia is going to come on, and he's just going to fill in everything else. He's going to fill in the Greek, which is actually a lot more. Uh, there's a lot more to the Greek version of Esther. Let me just see if I can pull this up and just show you guys a little bit. Um, just give me a second here. Just a second. They always say that in the Hebrew book of Esther, there is the name of God is not found in there, but apparently God, at least God is mentioned in the Greek. And, so it is different in that way. So the Hebrew version of Esther, just a little bit of an introduction to the Hebrew version of Esther. Excuse me, the Greek version of Esther. So this is what we're going to, a little bit of a sneak peek into what part of what we're going to get into on Saturday. I know Onia's got a lot more than this. He's going to get into like the Dead Sea Scrolls, Septuagint, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so the book of Esther in the Greek Septuagint contains 5 additions that the traditional Hebrew text doesn't have. These additions are recognized as deuterocanonical scripture by the Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Russian Orthodox churches. I believe also probably the Ethiopian as well, and I think there's other churches in there as well. They just didn't mention it here. Those additions are enclosed in spirit. Okay, so I'm reading from the eBible version here. Okay, so it just goes on to explain how this translation has actually handled those additions. So, yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to read the common King James Version family of manuscripts tonight and tomorrow, and Onia is going to come on with all of the other stuff that a lot of people don't know about and have never ever heard read in their life. So anyway, let's do this. This is Esther chapter 1. I am currently reading from the CSB version. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Esther chapter 1, verse 1. These events took place during the days of Ahasuerus, who ruled 127 provinces from India to Kush. Now, so India, Kush would be Ethiopia. In those days, King Ahasuerus, now I understand that in some translations we have Xerxes, depending, let me see here. Yeah, it says here generally identified with Xerxes. So you hear the name Xerxes. It's the same king. In those days, King Ahasuerus or Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the fortress of Susa. He held a feast in the 3rd year of his reign for all his officials and staff, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the officials from the provinces. He displayed the glorious wealth of his kingdom and the magnificent splendor of his greatness for a total of 180 days. At the end of this time, the king held a week-long banquet in the garden courtyard of the royal palace for all the people, from the greatest to the least, who were present in the fortress of Susa. White and violet linen hangings were fastened with fine white and purple linen cords to silver rods on marble or alabaster columns. Gold and silver couches were arranged on a mosaic pavement of red feldspar or porphyry marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones. Drinks were served in an array of gold goblets, each with a different design. Royal wine flowed freely according to the king's bounty. The drinking was according to royal decree. Quote, there are no restrictions, unquote. The king had ordered every wine steward in his household to serve whatever each person wanted. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women of King Ahasuerus' palace. On the seventh day, when the king was feeling good from the wine, Ahasuerus commanded Mahuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 eunuchs who personally served him, to bring Queen Vashti before him with her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and the officials because she was very beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command that was delivered by his eunuchs. The king became furious and his anger burned within him. The king consulted with the wise men who understood the times, understood propitious times. For it was his normal procedure to confer with experts in law and justice. The most trusted ones were, or the most trusted those near him were Karshena, Shethar, Anmatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Mamukan. They were the 7 officials of Persia and Media, personal access to the king, and occupied highest positions in the kingdom. The king asked, according to the law, what should be done with Queen Vashti, since she refused to obey King Ahasuerus' command that was delivered by the eunuchs. Mamukan said in the presence of the king and his officials, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but all the officials and the peoples who are in every one of King Ahasuerus' province. For the queen's action will become public knowledge to all the women and cause them to despise their husbands and say, King Ahasuerus ordered Queen Vashti brought before him, but she did not come. Before this day is over, the noble women of Persia and Media who hear about the queen's act will say the same thing to all the king's officials, resulting in more contempt and fury. If it meets the king's approval, he should personally issue a royal decree. Let it be recorded in the laws of Persia and Media so that it cannot be revoked. Vashti is not to enter King Ahasuerus' presence, and her royal position is to be given to another woman who is more worthy than she. The decree the king issues will be heard throughout his vast kingdom, so all women will honor their husbands from the greatest to the least. The king and his counselors approved the proposal, and he followed Mamukan's advice. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to each province in its own script, and to each ethnic group in its own language, that every man should be master of his own house and speak in the language of his own people. Esther chapter 2. Sometime later, when King Ahasuerus' rage had cooled down, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what was decided against her. The king's personal attendants suggested, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in each province of his kingdom so that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem at the fortress of Susa. Put them under the supervision of Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of women, and give them the required beauty treatments. Then the young woman who pleases the king will become queen instead of Vashti. This suggestion pleased the king, and he did accordingly. In the fortress of Susa, there was a Jewish man named Mordecai of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. He had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the other captives when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took King Jeconiah of Judah to exile. Mordecai was the legal guardian of his cousin Hadassah, that is Esther. His cousin here, his literally uncle's daughter, because she had no father or mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was extremely good looking. When her father and mother died, Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter. When the king's command and edict became public knowledge, and when many young women were gathered at the fortress of Susa under Haggai's supervision, Esther was taken to the palace into the supervision of Haggai, keeper of the women. The young woman pleased him and gained his favor so that he accelerated the process of the beauty treatments and the special diet that she received. He assigned 7 hand-picked female servants to her from the palace and transferred her to her servants to the harem's best quarters. Transferred her and her servants to the harem's best quarters. Esther did not reveal her ethnicity or her family background because Mordecai had ordered her not to make them known. Every day, Mordecai took a walk in front of the harem's courtyard to learn how Esther was doing and to see what was happening to her. During the year before each young woman's turn to go to King Ahasuerus, the harem regulation required her to receive beauty treatments with oil of myrrh for 6 months and then with perfumes and cosmetics for another 6 months. Then the young woman would go to the king. When the young woman would go to the king, she was given whatever she requested to take with her from the harem to the palace. She would go in the evening. In the morning, she would return to a second harem under the supervision of the king's Shaashgaz, keeper of the concubines. She never went to the king again unless he desired her and summoned her by name. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter. When her turn came to go to the king, she did not ask for anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of the women, suggested. Esther gained favor in the eyes of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Ahasuerus in the palace in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women. She had favor and approval from him than did any of the other virgins. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. The king held a great banquet for all his officials and staff. It was Esther's banquet. He freed his provinces from tax payments and gave gifts worthy of the king's bounty. When the virgins were gathered a second time, Mordecai was sick. Esther had not revealed her family background or her ethnicity as Mordecai had directed. She obeyed Mordecai's orders as she always had while he raised her. During those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the entrance, became infuriated and planned to assassinate King Ahasuerus. Literally, they sought to stretch out a hand against King Ahasuerus. When Mordecai learned of the plot, he reported it to Queen Esther, and she told the king on Mordecai's behalf. When the report was investigated and verified, both men were hanged on the gallows. This event was recorded in the historical record in the king's presence. Esther chapter 3. After all this took place, King Ahasuerus honored Haman, or Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite. He promoted him in rank and gave him a position higher than all the other officials. The entire royal staff at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman because the king had commanded this to be done for him. But Mordecai would not bow down or pay homage. The members of the royal staff at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" When they had warned him day after day and he still would not listen to them, they told Haman or Haman in order to see if Mordecai's actions would be tolerated, since he had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai was not bowing down or paying him homage, he was filled with rage. See, that's pride right there, a lot of pride. And when he learned of Mordecai's ethnic identity, it seemed repugnant to Haman to do away with Mordecai, or literally to stretch out a hand against Mordecai, to do away with Mordecai alone. He planned to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout Ahasuerus' kingdom. In the first year, the first month, or the month of Nisan, in King Ahasuerus' 12th year, the pur, that is, the lot, was cast before Haman for each day in each month, and it fell on the month Adar. Then Haman informed King Ahasuerus, "There is one ethnic group scattered throughout the peoples in every province of your kingdom, keeping themselves separate. Their laws are different from everyone else's, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If the king approves, let an order be drawn up authorizing their destruction. I will pay 375 tons of silver," literally will weigh 10,000 silver talents, "on the hands of the officials for deposit in the royal treasury." The king removed his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jewish people. Then the king told Haman, "The money and people are given to you to do with as you see fit." The royal scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and the order was written exactly as Haman commanded. It was intended for the royal satraps, the governors of each of the provinces, and the officials of each ethnic group, and written for each province in its own script, and to each ethnic group in its own language. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the royal signet ring. Letters were sent by couriers to each of the royal princes, telling the officials to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jewish people, young and old, women and children, and plunder their possessions on a single day, the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month. The Septuagint adds the text of Ahasuerus' letter here. Okay, so again, this is something that Onia will get into on Saturday. A copy of the text issued as law throughout every province was distributed to all the peoples so that they might get ready for that day. The couriers left, spurred on by royal command, and the law was issued in the fortress of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink while the city of Susa was in confusion. Esther chapter 4. When Mordecai learned that all, excuse me, when Mordecai learned all that had occurred, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went into the middle of the city and cried loudly and bitterly. He went only as far as the king's gate, since the law forbade anyone wearing sackcloth from entering the king's gate. There was great mourning among the Jewish people in every province where the king's command and edict came. They fasted, wept, and lamented, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Esther's female servants and her eunuchs came, reported the news to her, and the queen was overcome with fear. She sent clothes for Mordecai to wear so that he would take off his sackcloth, but he did not accept them. Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, to attend her and dispatch him to Mordecai to learn what he was doing and why. Literally, what is this and why is this? So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the city square in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened, as well as the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay the royal treasury for the slaughter of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued at Susa ordering their destruction, so that Hathach might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and command her to approach the king, implore his favor, and plead with him personally for her people. Hathach came and repeated Mordecai's response to Esther. Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to tell Mordecai, all the royal officials and the people of the royal provinces know that one law applies to every man or woman who approaches the king in the inner courtyard and who has not been summoned, the death penalty, unless the king extends the gold scepter, allowing that person to live. I have not been summoned to appear before the king for the last 30 days, literally these 30 days. Esther's response was reported to Mordecai. Mordecai told the messenger to reply to Esther, don't think that you'll escape the fate of all the Jews because you are in the king's palace. If you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will come to the Jewish people from another place, but you and your father's family will be destroyed. Who knows, perhaps you will come to your royal position for such a time as this. Esther sent for this reply to Mordecai, go and assemble all the Jews who can be found in Susa and fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. Excuse me. And I and my female servants who will also fast in the same way. Will also fast in the same way. After that, I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went and did everything Esther had commanded him. Esther chapter 5. On the third day, Esther dressed in her royal clothing and stood in the inner courtyard of the palace facing it. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the royal courtroom facing its entrance. As soon as the king saw Esther standing in the courtyard, she gained favor in his eyes. The king extended the gold scepter in his hand toward Esther, and she approached and touched the tip of the scepter. What is it, Queen Esther? The king asked her. Whatever you want, even to half the kingdom, will be given to you. If it pleases the king, Esther replied, may the king and Haman come today to the banquet I have prepared for them. The king said, hurry and get Haman so we can do as Esther had requested. So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. While drinking, or during the banquet of wine, the king asked Esther, whatever you ask will be given to you. Whatever you want, even to half the kingdom, will be done. Esther answered, this is my petition and my request. If I found favor in the eyes of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and perform my request, may and Haman come to the banquet I will prepare for them. Tomorrow I will do what the king has asked. Haman left full of joy and in good spirits, literally left rejoicing and good of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and Mordecai didn't rise or tremble in fear at his presence, Haman was filled with rage toward Mordecai. Yet Haman controlled himself and went home. He sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh to join him. Then Haman described for them his glorious wealth and his many sons. He told them all how the king had honored him and promoted him in rank over the other officials and the royal staff. What's more, Haman added, Queen Esther invited no one but me to join the king at the banquet that she had prepared. I am invited again tomorrow to join her with the king. Still, none of this satisfies me, since I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate all the time. His wife Zeresh and all his friends told him, have them build a gallows 75 feet tall, 50 cubits. Ask the king in the morning to hang Mordecai on it, then go to the banquet with the king and enjoy yourself. The advice pleased Haman, so he had the gallows constructed. Wow. Awesome, awesome story. Looking forward to getting into this in the next few days. All right, let's see what we have here in the live chat. And again, for those of you who are new, that concludes our reading for today. Cat cool. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Matthew says shalom. Cat cool says shalom. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Blessings multiplied to you, brother. Tammy says this was earlier. 10 in the chat. Hit the like button. Thank you very much, Tammy. Yes, please do that. Andrew asked the question, when Jesus died, where did he go and what did he do? I don't mean to be rude when I ask this, but did he burn in hell as other Christians say? I do not believe he did. There is very interesting extra biblical documents from the early centuries. Actually, you can actually find them in this book, the Super Gospel. And in these extra biblical books, take it for what it is. I'm not saying it's 100%, but I'm just saying it's just an interesting read. And it's ancient documents. By the way, this book's Super Gospel. I'm promoting this book, but I get nothing for promoting this. It's just an interesting book to read. It is put together by a gentleman by the name of Robert Farrell, and he what he did was he took all of the Gospels and all of the Apocrypha, New Testament Apocrypha, Pseudepigrapha, all these different writings, and he put it all together in chronological order. Everything. Some of the books in here that are quoted some of the biblical books, for example, First Corinthians, First Peter, First Thessalonians. We also got Second Baruch, Second Clement, Second Esdras, Acts of Andrew and Matthias. Anyway, there's a whole list. There's like a whole list. You can see, I know you can't read it, but you can see there's like a whole list here of books. Many of them are extra biblical books. And I've said all that to say this. In that compilation, and amongst some of those books, there is an account written of what happened to him. Okay. Now, without going into a whole lot of detail, like for example, where it says in Psalms, I'll just give you a little bit of a hint here. And Lord willing, when we get to that, like we will get to that, Lord willing, we'll get to that when we read the New Testament, okay? Because after we're done with the Tanakh and we finish up the Apocrypha and some of the so-called Old Testament pseudepigrapha, all that kind of thing, we're going to get into the New Testament again. And when we do that, I'm gonna pull out some of these books. I'm gonna pull out the infancy gospels and some of these other interesting books that are very, very interesting. Anyways, I remember this is just something. According to one of these extra biblical documents, the account of Psalm 94 or Psalm 24, excuse me, is supposed to be according to I'm just saying, okay? This is not me saying it, but according to some of these extra biblical documents, the Psalm 24 is about what happened to Jesus after he died. Okay? Like for example, where it says, "Lift up your heads, O you gates, be lifted up, you everlasting doors, the King of glory shall come in." Now, according to these documents, this is talking about when the King of glory went to Sheol, so to speak. Okay, went to the holding places, as it were, of some of the dead. Okay, and who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. The Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O you gates. Lift up you everlasting doors. The King of glory shall come in. Okay, so anyway, according to these books that I'm referring to, it doesn't say he burns in hell. Okay, it says that he goes to the abode of the dead, and some interesting things happen. I do not believe that he really suffered in the afterlife. There's no reason for him to. I don't believe so at this point. So that's my take on it. And again, Lord willing, we'll get into all those details, and there is a lot of details, by the way. Some of these books. Let's see if I can find. Books such as, let me see here. Descensus, Latin A, Descensus, Latin B. There's a couple ones there. The Descensus is another one. Very interesting read anyway. So Lord willing, we will get into that, all that kind of stuff. Very good question, Andrew. I can tell you're really thinking really some good questions. Absolutely. And yeah, so Lord willing, we'll get into all of that good stuff shortly. I'm not sure exactly what month it will be in, but I can't see it being too long. We have We don't have a whole lot more actually to go in the Tanakh, but after we get that done, we'll read some of the Apocrypha and then go right on over to the New Testament. And wow, I tell you something. Once we get to the New Testament, getting to the four Gospels, especially, not only the four Gospels but everything, the Book of Acts, the letters of Paul. I've got so much more to say this time around, as opposed to what I said the last time around. It's still posted on the channel, by the way. It was how many years ago now I went through that, but yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Andrew, for asking. Caballero says, thank you for everything that you do. I have learned a lot. Blessings. Thank you very much, Caballero. Blessings multiplied to you and yours. Brother, I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Okay, so that wraps it up for tonight. Tomorrow, Erev Shabbat, okay? Tomorrow, Friday, so I will be finishing up Esther, perhaps dabbling into a little bit of other things as well, but definitely another night of reading scripture and fellowship and all that good stuff, okay? Live Q&A and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, guys, again, thank you very much. Thank you for your fellowship. Thank you for your comments and your questions and everything. You guys are awesome. You guys are world changers. As I always say, I just pray that everything we do here would be a great blessing to you and would just exponentially bless you and increase your knowledge of the scriptures and of the ways of the Lord, the ways of God, the things of heaven, and just bless your walk with God. Amen. Okay, so as usual, I'll see you guys tomorrow night, 7 p.m. For those of you who are new here again, we're doing this every single day. We're doing this every single day by the grace of God. And every day at 7 p.m. except for Saturday. We do it, Saturday is at 2 p.m., 2 p.m. Eastern, that is. I'm talking Eastern time zone, New York time zone. Okay, so Sunday through Friday, 6 nights a week, 7 p.m. Eastern. And Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And again, this Saturday, we're going to have Onia with us, Lord willing. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Tammy says, have a wonderful night. All, thank you. You too. And blessings multiplied to you. Billy says, thank you. Shalom and blessings to you all. Thank you very much, Billy. Blessings as well multiplied to you. As always, I pray for each and every one of you that are listening and watching. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen, amen. See you tomorrow night.